Okay, I'd like to call the Infrastructure Committee meeting of January the 10th, 2018 to order. We have Councillor McMillan sending his regrets, and we have Councillor Foster sitting in on Councillor McMillan's behalf. Thank you, Rob. All other committee members are present. In addition, this evening we have, to my left, Dave Graham, Director of Public Works, Walter Neubauer, Manager of Technical Services, Lee Rippenberg, Manager of Roads and Fleet, and Gary Del Bianco, our Deputy Clerk. Are there any declarations of interest this evening? Seeing none, do any members have any changes to the order of business? We have 3 reports this evening.
Can we go straight to new business?
We have a couple of presentations, Councillor Foster. We have no delegations this evening. We have no items of correspondence. Without further ado, the first report, and I believe we have a presentation on PW 18-01, the Town of Lincoln Speed Reduction Campaign Update. Director Graham, Mr. Neubauer is going to take us through this. Walter, good evening.
Okay, so I'm asked to provide an update on our speed reduction campaign in 2017. The campaign focuses on a 3-phased approach to reducing speeds in the community by increasing awareness, reducing regulated speeds, and enforcement. The second year of the program has made progress in all 3 areas of the program.
Is your microphone on?
Yes, okay. So why are we doing this? Why do we have a speed reduction campaign? Motorists speeding on local roadways pose a threat to both motorists and pedestrian safety. There is a direct link between lower operating speeds and the survival rate of victims of vehicle and pedestrian. For our 2017 digital feedback speed sign program, the 2017 program is complete and the speed data has been trended. The results will be posted on the town's website. 6 regular sized speed signs were deployed in pairs in the field, and 2 larger signs were used for a longer duration pilot program in the rural setting. A total number of 47 locations were recorded in Lincoln in 2017. Data collected in 2017 indicates that the majority of motorists are respecting the speed limits, although infrequent high speeding still does occur and some streets remain problematic. The second phase of our speed reduction campaign, when we're dealing with the feedback signs, is active monitoring. 2017 speed data shows a potential speeding concern. More monitoring will be completed in 2018 to trend and confirm the speed conditions. Regardless of whether or not we confirm a problem through trending, we will still contact the police department for more targeted enforcement in potential problem locations. Potential problem locations that were identified in 2017 include Philp Road, 7th Avenue, 4th Avenue, and Mountain View Road. Third phase to the speed sign program includes site-specific action plans. So we've collected the data, we've noticed a problem, have put the signs back out, we've confirmed that there's a problem. What do we do now? So where the data results from phase 2 of the program have confirmed a speeding problem, staff will work with the town's transportation master plan consultant to develop site-specific action plans to address speeding concerns, permanent traffic calming, speed reductions, etc. Trended problem areas where we know that there's a speeding problem, that we have to do something beyond signage, beyond speed signs, are 19th Street, Camden Road, and Lincoln Avenue. Some other locations that we've identified where we're sure that there's likely some speeding problems, and in advance of doing these site-specific action plans on traffic calming, we decided that let's do what we can do through signage. So earlier in the year, in 2017, Cherry Avenue and 9th Street both had their speeds reduced from 60 kilometers an hour to 50 kilometers an hour. And in known problem areas, we've decided to install additional 50-kilometer-an-hour signage. Right now, when you enter the town borders, there's signs that say every road in Lincoln is 50 kilometers an hour. Where we have these problems, we've decided to put up additional signage, identifying where the speed is, those locations. Another part of the speed reduction campaign was speed limit reductions. Council has approved regulatory speed limit reductions to 40 kilometers an hour in some urban areas across Lincoln, and has also supported a targeted approach in this regard moving forward. The targeted approach established screening criteria for identifying road candidates based on important roadside environment or pedestrian collisions with vehicles of high concern. 2017, following 14 local roads had regulatory speed limits reduced. Ashby Drive, Drake Avenue, Frederick, John Street, Sweeney Drive, Cedarbrook Lane, Elizabeth Street, William Street, Maple Avenue, Garden Gate Terrace, Central Avenue, 4th Avenue, John Charles Boulevard, and Whitehorse Road. Based on the screening criteria, staff recommend that 2 additional streets be reduced to 40 kilometers an hour in 2018. That is a request in the report to create a bylaw to reduce the speeds to 40 kilometers an hour on Alyssa Drive and St. George's Drive. Third phase of the speed reduction campaign is the enforcement policy. The town has formed a cooperative partnership with Niagara Regional Police for speed enforcement. Data from the 2017 Digital Speed Sign Program will be shared with the NRP for more targeted enforcement. Something else that we tried this year to help reduce speeds and encourage driver compliance, specifically with stop conditions, was our speed hump pilot program. In 2017, staff installed portable speed humps as a pilot program. The following locations were targeted: Serena Drive at Alyssa Drive, Garden Gate Terrace near Hillary Ballpark. At the end of the season, staff conducted an online survey to directly engage the public and to obtain their thoughts on each program. The results of all surveys reflect that a large percentage of residents in the piloted neighborhoods were in favor of the speed humps and would like some form of permanent traffic calming installed. And as part of the report, we included as attachments the surveys that were conducted. They were conducted through SurveyMonkey. So thumb through that attachment and see the specific questions that were asked and responses. Staff recommend that the temporary portable speed humps be installed at the following locations in 2018: Ashby Drive, block at the Ashby Drive Park. We've heard a lot of complaints from the public at our public meetings. It's just about speeding at that location and safety. I'd like to target that location and try that and see how it works. 4th Avenue, mid-block between Jordan Road and 19th Street. We have reduced the speed to 40 kilometers an hour, and the data that we've collected in that location indicates that motorists are traveling above the regulatory speed. So we thought we would target this location with speed humps to see if Serena Drive, mid-block between Alyssa Drive and the Fleming Center. Based on the response that we received from the community, that location, there's a lot of support, and although we removed the speed hump for the winter season, we felt that it was important to put it back. So council has approved in the budget the purchase of an additional location until more developed with our team. At the end of the 2018 season, staff will conduct a similar survey to the area residents to discern next steps in 2018. implement additional 40-kilometer-an-hour speed reductions early 2000. Publish 2017 digital feedback sign program results and prepare for 2018 monitoring season. Develop site-specific action plans to address trended speed. You communicate with NRP and strengthen the speed reduction partnership. And develop a communication campaign.
Walter? Any questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Walter, through you, Mr. Chair. So this is really good, and it's almost sort of hearkening to what the mayor always says as well. It's nice that we have, you know, real numbers to go and show what's happening with things and making some good decisions from those things as we're moving forward. Just a couple of questions. So the data that we've received for this, how granular is it? In other words, do we know which day of the week, for instance, this thing was recording on it?
Yes, we have that. Actually, I believe that we can break the reports down into 15-minute.
Oh, cool.
24-hour period.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did last year is we took advantage of some new technology. We retrofitted the existing signs with cloud technology, so staff don't actually have to physically go out and pull the signs down to be able to receive the data. So if someone calls in with a complaint and the signs are up, we can actually go and get data just from the computers. It's a lot more efficient, and we've been able to get a lot more done.
Yeah, that's really good. And the reason that I was thinking is that, for example, you've identified Mountain View Road as a road that has particular speeding problems. But I would be fascinated to know by day of week what's going on with that particular road. You know, it's a very heavy use for tourism up through that particular road. You know, are we having more problems on weekends or is it on weekdays? And if it's weekdays, then obviously it's the, you know, like Tony up at the end of Mountain View driving fast to go to work type of thing. Like the reality is that we can go and try and maybe do a little bit further analysis on some of this stuff.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
That's a really great point, because I remember when those were up, and Walter, we had a meeting, and you sent me the data like 4 days after it was here. And the interesting thing, just in the first 4 days, was the data collected from northbound traffic versus southbound was dramatically different.
Yeah.
So that's a great point to look at the trends.
Well, you know, we've got the data, so I mean, you know, I know it's not exactly the most fun job in the world, but going through and trolling some of this might actually be, you know, good for some trending and, you know, giving us a better idea of what we're really up against with some of these things. I gotta admit, I really like this temporary speed bumps program that we've put in place, and I like the spots that are being chosen for next year as well. I think it'll be good, and I personally, I think we should be doing more. I think we need to think long and hard about permanent speed bumps, and I can give you the one example that has always stuck out for me, and is what they did with the region over in Grimsby with those crosswalks and stuff, and the way that they built those. That was an unmitigated disaster right from the start as it was going through. And so, you know, it's the cost of maintaining, you know, the permanent type of thing. And I'm sure it costs more to build those type of things in as well. So I think as a municipality, I think we're going down the right road with the temporary. And I think, you know, I think that actually in the end would not be a bad philosophy to go with for a while with that. So anyway, thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Before Jason, one of the things that I found interesting today in sitting with Dave to go over the agenda, and I should have realized this, but just for the attention of other committee members, and maybe everybody's already picked up on this, but I had a lot of questions last year on the speed hump that was on Garden Gate, and people are saying, like, why is it even there? And Dave pointed out to me today, and it kind of jumped out at me when I looked at what we're doing for this year, is that now we're going to mid-block, whereas before, they were at crosswalks, they were at intersections. So Dave pointed out to me that really, by putting them in last year, it had nothing to do with speeding. It was all about the fact that police were saying we're having people running stop signs, and it's at crosswalks, and they were concerned it was gonna be an accident. So people were saying to me, like, why have you got a speed hump on Garden Gate where you've got it? And I didn't really have an answer for them, thinking it was a speeding reduction, but Dave pointed out to me that it wasn't. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the mid-block speed humps indicate this year. Mary Stin.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I get very excited about this because we're making such good progress. And I'm going to be meeting with the new regional police chief. I haven't met with him yet, so I'll make sure that this is on the agenda when I talk to him to, help keep those relationships strong. I'll measure this, though, by the success on the worst streets. So when we start to have success on 9th Street, I'll know we've arrived. So I love the progressive nature of this. I think that we do need to have wins in those tough areas. So we don't want to be patting ourselves too vigorously on the back if we can't figure out a solution. We're certainly sending a progressive message to the public that that we're serious about this, and the speed limits are going to be less and less, and you're going to get more and more tickets if you don't start listening up. So I'm happy to see that volume of streets that are coming down. And I must say that running the stop signs, and it's not even rolling, it is just not even paying any attention at all. I'm really shocked at the amount of it, and I'm just one person, so I can't imagine what everybody else is seeing. But I really have my sights on 9th Street and what's going on there, and what can you tell us about that area? Because it just doesn't seem to matter what's happening. Are we making any progress? And did anybody hear anything from Mr. McQueen at the levee? Because that's kind of my.
His sign got stolen.
His sign got stolen. Well, I don't know. You may not want to talk about that tonight, but it seems to me that that's an area that if we can't solve that one, we're not going to be able to ever be truly successful. We'll always be tinkering around the edges. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know how you want to handle that question.
Well, I'll let Walter speak to it, and I don't know where Mr. McQueen actually lives. I've heard that it's up by Rockaway Golf Course.
No, he's north of Regional Road 81.
Okay.
Just on the corner.
Okay, so we are putting a sign in from April till July, long-term, on 9th, but that's from 4th Avenue to King.
Which makes sense, because that's the problem there. That
Okay,
is a major
so we're gonna have a sign there from April till July.
But we've had signs there before, Mr. Chairman. It's my
So-
understanding that we've done quite a bit of surveillance there. What do we think might make the difference? A Gatling gun attached to the sign?
I know.
I've spoken to recognizes that I agree it's not working. We're going to keep them up because we need to do something. So we're going to be working with our transportation to try and come up with a solution for this location. The challenge is that it's a rural setting. So in an urban area, there's lots of different options. You can put in speed cushions, roadway, but in an urban area, in a rural setting where there's not a lot of lighting and motorists are traveling at a much higher rate of speed, there becomes a concern that if you were to put a physical barrier or make some sort of change to the roadway, you could be putting someone at risk, especially someone who might not be familiar with the locate that area. My understanding is that I didn't have a chance to follow up, but the golf course, that seems to be an area that we're going to target that. Either the police were going to show up at a certain time and just let people know, hey, slow down, it's going too fast in this location. So I think raising awareness that way to the population and people that are, that may be a start, but we need to come up with some sort of strips, there's different things that we can do in that location, but whatever we decide that we're going to do, we're going to need to engage the public, because loud, and do people really want rumble strips? And that was the purpose of having these surveys, is put in temporary things and try them out and see how they work, and then talk to the people that live there and find out, did they work, did they not work, did they like them? That's gonna be important, but it's not just 9th Street that we recognize as a problem. These rural roads, where people are coming from a very rural setting into a semi-urban center like Camden, 19th Street, they're challenged, and they will remain a challenge, but we're a solution.
Well, I certainly think that enforcement is important, and I know Sergeant Orlando, I know he's moved on from 8th District to St. Catharines now in
Yeah.
January, but, you know, he's been telling me for the last 2 years, like, you know, you put a cruiser on the side of the road, and it works. So, you know, to your point, Walter, like, if that's where we think a lot of the speeding is being concentrated, from the Rockaway Golf Course going or coming to a tee time, somebody's late for a tee time and they're speeding, like, you know, we put a cruiser out there a couple of days a week, I mean, maybe it'll impact it, I don't know. I'm, to the mayor's point, I mean, 19th Street, or 9th Street continues to be a problem.
Well, it was my understanding, Mr. Chairman, that we were going to, maybe it was Sergeant Orlando that recommended that we actually go to Rockaway Glen and talk to the owners, and did we actually do that, Mr. Chairman, through you?
I'm not sure if that communication happened. But we can follow up and find out if it didn't happen. We'll ask that it does happen.
You know, Mr. Chairman, it seems to me the most normal thing for whoever's in St. Catharines on that kind of beat between the two municipalities, that this would be a very good place for them to be hanging out, and certainly during the summer. But, okay, so what I got out of this was that it is one of the areas that's going to have, the signs are going to be back up, going to be more permanent. And I'll certainly make sure that it's on my agenda when I talk to him. And maybe it is time for a public meeting. I mean, do we have to have a motion for stuff like that? I think most of these things, the staff have just been moving forward with anything that seems reasonable, testing this out, testing that out, giving us
Well, Mr. Neubauer,
results. I'm
you're
happy
going to
with
reach
that.
out to the Rockaway people?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay.
Maybe there is something, maybe we can come up with some signs that we can put near the entrances, just as a reminder to the general, please slow down when traveling 9th Street. We're going to have to be creative.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to be writing a motion or anything. I think the staff have been, you know, just, they've been taking our suggestions so far and turning them into, you know, good outcomes. So why don't we just keep doing that and see where this takes us? I mean, we may not know anything again until the end of 2018, but I think we're probably okay. It's progressive. Thanks.
Councilor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, very, very good report. A lot of detail, and I also agree that I think we're moving along a very nice road here. I did have a question about the speed humps, but Councillor Foster answered my question. I was wondering if they're removed in winter, and I guess they are. So we have that time in the winter that they're not in place that we need to deal with. I do like the addition of the 50-kilometer-an-hour speed signs. I think the signs coming into town are, for the most part, missed. And I really do think that having those signs out there, people get it, you know, better than just assuming. I request, I like visuals, and I think we got a nice opportunity here for another visual. The map that we put together for the road maintenance program, could we now put together a map for the speed program so that we show what streets that we've monitored and, maybe color code them to, this street shows up less than the posted speed limit. This street shows up more than this posted speed limit. So if you're going to put this on the website, put that map out there so people can see, hey, is my street been monitored? And is it above or below? And maybe it's the trended ones, I don't know. But just, I think it would present a nice visual package. I'm going to make kind of a crazy comment here. Are some of our streets, and probably more the roads, are they too slow? When we look at some of our rural roads, is 50 kilometers an hour the right speed out there? I get it, if we got residential, we got housing, we got schools, we got whatever, but if you're traveling some of those rural roads, and I'm thinking about roads like 7th Street between 19th and 21st, and, are we going to pound people for going 60 kilometers an hour through there? I think there's something maybe that we need to look at that way, and 9th Street could fall into that too. It could fall into, we don't have a lot of residential out there. We have a very vocal resident, I get that, but we don't have a lot of residential out there. And here we are on an average on 9th, I don't see 9th now, I thought I had it, but is it reasonable to think that people are going to travel below 50 kilometers an hour on some of these rural roads? Just putting it out there. I'm thinking about 19th Street coming from 7th down to Glen Road. And if 19th Street was 60 kilometers an hour, well, let's leave it at 50 kilometers an hour. 50 kilometers an hour to the top of the hill, if you're coming north, to the top of the hill, it's all vineyards. Basically, there is some houses up there, but it's for the most part vineyards. But when you get to the top of the hill, if we had a sign there saying, okay, it's 40 kilometers an hour now, or a lit sign, it's now 40. When I come into Camden, I see that sign every time, and it really hits me, and I look at my speedometer. I'll tell you, we've got a problem on 19th Street, and there's a lot of trucks coming down 19th Street that are in this 70 kilometer an hour monitor. So if even if you ran it for that distance from 7th to the top of the hill, if you know where I'm at, just before you go down into that residential area where I happen to live, but right there, and at the top of the hill, you change the speed and put out a sign there saying, lit somehow saying, we're going to 40 kilometers an hour now. I've had the cruisers sitting right out in front of my house, and they pick them off like, just like, okay, next guy, write them up. 3 guys have gone by speeding, next guy gets it. 3 guys have gone by speeding, next guy gets it, or 10 guys go by. So that is a problem area, but I wonder if there's not that type of approach to say, okay, we're going to change the speed. It's not going to be the same as over top of the hill where it's rural, makes some sense. So just some ideas there. I think that, again, I think that Camden sign it always is very effective for me. And I know you probably don't have the electrical in all locations, but where you do, if you had a lit sign like that, it may be something to consider, especially out in the rural area of the town. So again, great report, and just some thoughts and maybe an idea around the map.
I think it's a good comment on the report on the map. If we're going to put stuff on the website,
Yeah.
let's put stuff there that people can actually look at and really get something out of. And they're going to be looking for where they live and the streets that
Sure.
they're driving on. So let's have it jump out at them and be important data. Councilor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair Brunet. Through you to Mr. Neubauer. Walter, just, can you refresh my memory? So average 85th percentile in 2017. So we'll take Alexandra First Street. So that's 28. So does that mean 28% are exceeding the speed limit in the 85th percentile? Or does that mean the 85th percentile, they're going 28 kilometers an hour? What, I'm a little confused on that column.
That 85% of vehicles traveling at that rate of speed.
Okay.
Or less.
Okay, so that's, okay. So, having said that, wondering why we're continued to monitoring in 2018 Vine Street and Queen Street. Like, we're on Queen Street for 2 months, and the 85th percentile says they're going 30 kilometers an hour. So there's not a problem. Or are we trying to trend that? Because I know I've received information from a few residents on Hickson. Hickson seems to be a problem street, but Hickson doesn't appear on here. So just curious, are you trying to get some data trending over a calendar year? Is that the thought behind this, or?
Well, the 2018 list, there's been a roster of streets that have requested. So these have either been previously requested or our staff have reviewed it and thought that it was important to monitor that street or maybe a side street. So there could be a number of different reasons why that street is on the 2018 list. What I can say is that the list is very fluid and we can change it easily.
Okay. Okay.
And we've also left room at the end of the season for additional requests.
Okay.
We receive requests on a regular basis.
Okay, well, and then a follow-up to that, if I may. Like John Street and William Street, we're measuring them in August, and those tend to be the school areas. It would be more prudent, in my observation, to do them when school is in, so between September and June. I mean, unless it's that, you know, if you want a fall date, you know, September, October, and a winter date and a spring date, I wouldn't bother with a summer date there, because, I mean, not that you're encouraging people to speed in the summer, but I'd rather monitor it when school's in. Another question with respect to, and I do like the questionnaire, but I was a bit, so going back to my days of being a statistician, the statistically significance of 50 respondents. I mean, you're going to get a trend, right? And it's a trend that we want, but I don't think it's statistically significant to act in, you know, it's confirming what we're saying, but I mean, the relevance of it is fraught with
Knowledge is good.
knowledge is good. I mean, if we had 500 respondents, I'd be on that. Thank you. You're my sound guy, aren't you? Yeah.
Got it.
Knowledge is good. So, but question 10, so if changing on-street parking was required to accommodate traffic calming measures, but we know that on-street parking is a traffic calming measure. So I think the question there is, are you going to exchange it for traffic calming measures? So I think it would have been better to say, we're going to maintain the on-street parking, plus we're going to institute traffic calming measures. Because on-street parking, and we've experienced that on Alyssa, you know, everyone was bitching and moaning about the cars parked on both sides of the street there. Everyone slows because it's a narrow corridor. It brings that road really narrow. And then the other question back to 9th Street, and I find that also curious because King Street at the 9th Street approach, the region had put in the paved concrete. So you hit those two things before you got to the dip, which slowed you down. And it reminded you, much like that overhead sign. But the people that lived there complained that it was too noisy. So they took them out. So, I mean, I think we're going to have a really frank discussion with these people on 9th Street and say, look, rumble strips, they're going to make noise, but at what cost do you want these things put in to reduce the speed? Less, road tax and things like that. But, like, be prepared that, these things come at a cost. And we don't have a lot of money, so we're not going to put this stuff in, and then 6 months later you say, take them out. You're either on board or you're not. So I think we have to have that frank discussion with them. So, yeah, and just the fact that I didn't see Hickson there, so I would recommend adding Hickson to the list, yeah, because that tends to be a shortcut and a straight shot, so, thank you, though.
Okay, we have sorry, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of quick things. I really like the idea of the map. I think that's a great idea. I really hate the idea of a public meeting. I think we could probably accomplish an awful lot of what we want with this through doing the last item that Walter had on the list, which was basically a really top-notch communication piece that needs to get out into the community. Because, by the way, we don't have time coming up to an election time for a public meeting on something like this anyway. So, but the one thing I did want to ask about the numbers, and as I just quick went over them again, I noticed that Green Lane between Ontario Street and Bartlett and Hillside between Aberdeen and Ashby are abnormally high based on the urban setting, if we want to put it that way. Like everything else that's been identified on here is more or less rural in nature that we're concerned about. And of course, when I've been hammering away at this over the years, as John well knows, my view of this has always been, let's make sure that the urban area where people are is properly taken care of, so we aren't having children run over, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just curious the criteria, I guess, through to Dave and Walter, because if you take a look at what the numbers are really showing us here, those two in particular are saying there's a problem here in that urban setting situation. I mean, 19th and Green Lane, Cedarbrook over to Lincoln is also showing a problem, but they're, again, maybe not as urban as these other two. So anyway, just as you're looking at the strategies that are going forward, don't discount, even, 8 or 9 kilometers over within the urban setting. Like, that's not a good thing, so we need to make sure that we're keeping on top of those things as well. So, thanks.
That report PW 18-01, Town of Lincoln Speed Reduction Campaign be received as information, and that a bylaw be presented to council to provide for additional 40-kilometer-an-hour speed reductions on Alyssa Drive between Ontario Street and Sarita Drive, and on St. George's Drive between Elizabeth Street and Stadtwater Drive. Pleasure on the motion. The next report is PW 18-02, the summary report for Public Works Department Roads Infrastructure.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chairman, Lee and I tonight are going to give you an overview of our road summary report, primarily as it relates to last year, 2017, but also we want to share more trended data. We're making a commitment to do a lot more trending, looking at our metrics, measuring progress, and also we'll be showing historical trends as well that we can reflect on. Just to kind of give you an overview, we're going to be talking about just our service delivery, as a summary investment we're making in roads. Our road needs study that we completed last year, I know we shared that earlier with committee prior to budgets, so, some of it you've seen before, but I think it's important. A lot of the highlights again. Talking about our pavement preservation, road rehabilitation program, operational programs, and, what to look forward to in 2018.
Okay, so we'll just jump right into the presentation. Again,
This is the actual.
and we're just gonna, highlight what our network is, and again, we're here between the semi-urban and the urban area. But again, our makeup for Lincoln is well,
Show, rather than notes and on the slides.
Down in the bottom right, right, yep.
Right
no,
there.
Right there.
Right there.
Slideshow.
I apologize. Okay, there we go. It wasn't looking right on the screen either. Okay, so, and from that, we've got the rural cross sections, the urban, the semi-urban, and the differences between the two. We always want to continue focusing on those semi-urban roads, upgrading them to the urban sections where we can, and that's a big focus for the construction projects, the urban construction. For our service delivery, this is everything that Public Works is involved in. It's not so nice. Animal pickup, litter pickup, winter maintenance. All of our daily road maintenance. Right there, and again, Walter spoke to it, the speed reduction campaign program. Always keeping in mind that we do have ongoing interdepartmental support. Hold on to help, dig a grave for community services, vice versa, community services. Silo, kind of thinking. MMS update. So again, we just wanted to, some of this information as bring it to light again. So with the MMS update, task force has gone through the review, the second mandatory review. They're just waiting for the final approval from the province, and that is going to be then communicated. That's the last we heard. On that, the most significant for us as a municipality. All municipal sidewalks have to be, right now, as it stands, 5% of our municipal sidewalks, where the remainder is
Investing in roads, this is a really good graph that shows the investment progress that council supported in road network. 2018 on there as well to show that level of investment. It gives a good graphical representation of the level. Couple things to take away. When you looked at last year's program on the bar graph, it's a little bit higher, and that's primarily because of the massive Drake Avenue neighborhood. That was one of the largest reconstruction projects that we've done here in the municipality, doing that whole neighborhood. Turned out really well, but again, it's a costly project, so that's why you're seeing this year's program less, given that again, roads is a big part of that. And I think it's a great step in the right direction to start building a sustainable financial plan to support our annual road. Very good accomplishment. So going to our road needs study. Again, we completed that in 2017, and the last one was done in 2012, 2013. And on this round, we received a score of 69% out of 100. And what that is, they measure it, it's called the Pavement Condition Index. Well, it really is a rating of how good the road condition is. So 100% would be a brand new asphalt road in a subdivision. So the higher number is a better road, the lower number is representing a poorer quality. So on an average of our total network, we achieved a 60% pavement condition index. The little graph here kind of breaks down, just to kind of give you an overview of, the dark green is our excellent roads, lighter green is good, the orange is fair, and the red is poor. And a lot of our asset management strategies with pavement preservation, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation. After our good roads, that's very important. And what we're trying to do is make sure the good roads, the lighter green, and even some of the fair roads don't start slipping to that red category. And when they do, you're into very costly rehabilitation. So again, this is a really great accomplishment from our last road needs study. We've increased road condition network across the town by 11% over the last 4 to 5 years, which is a great accomplishment for council in terms of providing that investment to improve the road network. The town has really made a really good progress. Again, the pavement preservation strategies have also helped us save roads from getting worse and preventing that. So through the road needs study, one of the components of it we wanted to do, and we've done a lot of modeling with the data that's been collected and a lot of financial modeling, and we wanted to look at what would be appropriate for our annual funding levels. And to do that, we need to look at sort of an endpoint or a goal. And so what we did is we said, okay, well, let's have a level of service goal that we want to have as a target, and that will help set our funding level. And within the industry, what we're seeing is a lot of municipalities are looking at setting a level of service for their road network based on the pavement condition index. So if you will, it's kind of, you're striving to say that we want to provide a level of service that, and what we're suggesting, a good range is 70-75%. So our target is we want our road network average pavement condition index to be 75%. Look at other communities, that's a good goal to be striving for. Back to the last slide, currently we're at 69%. This is going to be something that we want to be ahead of the curve on with the asset management regulations. They're going to be requiring municipalities in the near future to establish a level of service that you will fund your assets to. And suggesting is we strive for a 75% pavement condition. Our average condition road network. When we modeled that, we looked at, okay, if we want to reach that goal, what does our annual funding commitments look like? And we're using that 1.7 million number. And based on our modeling that we've done, if we need to fund $1.7 million, and we've done that in 2018, by 2020, based on our current data that we have and what we're anticipating, at that goal of a 75% pavement condition. That's a level of service that we want to provide. So it's basically ensuring long-term road network sustainability.
so we've been talking about the road lean study and how we've, how we've come from 2012 to now, and 1.7 million, spending a lot for the next few years. And just want to reiterate how that's going to happen in 2020, by modeling, if we get to that 70, almost 75 PCI, is to continue strategy, the asset management strategy of the whole, keeping good roads good while not forgetting about the bad roads. That's the pavement preservation. What we've been really focusing on for the last strategy, and this is your typical deterioration curve. The red line being how pavement, the structure is failing over time. It starts out very good, and it has that decline over time. And the green line is where you catch it at a certain point in its life, do some type of strategy to it, surface seal it, microsurface paint, asphalt it. Structure, and then condition rating, and then it starts to fail over time. And so the whole idea is that those catch them when they're starting to fail longer. We can extend. That's the pavement preservation. That's what is the industry standard. Got you 4 to 5 times that. So how has this impacted our roads? Well, when we consider 2018 being proposed, this is the impact that we're having. We're showing how we're really more focusing on the balanced approach, and so we're trying to balance the good roads portion and the bad roads portion. We're not trying to, it's just, as Councilor McPherson said, visual. Here is actually trying to balance what we're maintaining over time. Not just focusing heavily on bad roads. Are gaining on our roads. So from 2014, of our pavement preservation, after this year, and crack sealing program. 14 kilometers now has been done. That's the first line of defense. It helps to extend the life as well of roads 4 to 5 years. That's only done on hot mix roads. And this year actually is also did it with that sandy mix that we use for the pavement. We also really a lot of crack sealing, cracks of roads with the extremely hot, but it's a very sandy. Roadside ditching, we're up to about 25 kilometers. Very efficient program, helps to drain out the base of the road. And I know for Lincoln Avenue South, people were wondering why we were cutting the ditches. I haven't touched it before. I don't know how long. And but people, once we talk to residents about, it's actually trying to drain the base of the road, then they're understanding it more and more. And that project went very well this year. Signage. The pass-fail rate that's stated in there, of course, it is still minimal, and so we're having good success with the signage program. So that's following on 2018. I think they will talk to this.
So again, aggressive capital road resurfacing and rehabilitation program, which is the 1.7 funding model. We've got a really good balance heading into 2018, rehabilitating a number of rural roads. We're also doing a lot of we call shade and pave, but hot mix resurfacing in urban Vineland, Beansville, Jordan. And again, that's to help extend the life of that road. Program is a very balanced program in that regard. We also have Academy Street. That's our urban reconstruction project in terms of construction for 2018. That's where we'll be upgrading that road to an urban standard with curbs, fixing the drainage problems, sidewalk, putting in new water main. Our transportation master plan is 2018, a very, very important process. So that's part of the program. We've got some Moyer Road culvert and the slope stability project that's planned for 2018. Cross bridge removals. Structure, we're planning on doing that. Elizabeth Street, something that we are doing proactively to be more project ready. Elizabeth Street is a street that requires full urbanization, curbs, gutters. Sidewalks are a very high demand in that area, and we need to get sidewalks up through there. We have to replace the sanitary sewer. It's planned for 2019, the actual construction, but again, we want to do a lot of work in 2018, being this year, to get ready for that. We have a lot of design work underway, and that's really to align with our development pressures. Large urban road reconstruction design and urban safety in the Maple, Bridgeport, Queen Victoria, and that's to support a development application that is on that. We're also looking at Lincoln Avenue South. There's a development proposal on this side of Lincoln Avenue, south of King Street, and we want to align the road upgrade with the development in terms of development needs being infrastructure upgrades with water. We want to be prepared and ready to follow up with the road in terms of sidewalk work, curb and gutter, so we want to get those designs started so we're ready on that. We're also going to be looking at 13th Street and looking at a design to reopen that road. a sidewalk in place for the old bus stop from Ontario Street to the carpool parking lot. And the timing, we're subject to the MTO. The MTO is going to be doing major parking lot upgrades this spring with electric charging stations for electric vehicles, and they're doing some other works. So we have that work has to occur first before we can do the sidewalk. We're also looking at initiating a shoreline protection strategy study for Lakeshore Road, for the Lakeshore roads, after what we experienced this last spring. Just trying to be proactive and looking at strategies moving forward and how we're going to start providing protection works. Also got a salt management plan that we want to go through for last year. Again, just to continue to share these, also I know you've seen them before, but again, we're looking at a lot of growth over the next 3 to 5 years with our roads. Again, primarily urban roads, when you're looking at Cherry Heights subdivision that's going to be coming on in Deansville, Vista Ridge, Prudhome's, going to be a lot of new urban roads. So, getting prepared for what that's going to look like in terms of service delivery. We're also building development charge study. I'll get ready for some of that in terms of we're anticipating we're going to plow vehicle or truck to be able to snowplow all these roads in the next 3 to 5 years worth of including our staffing resources. Operationally, and for sidewalks, again, over the next 5 to 10 years, when we look at both development, where we're going to have brand new sidewalks that currently don't exist with a lot of new developments, but also more importantly, we have a lot of roads in our 10-year plan that we're upgrading. We want to put sidewalks in, Rittenhouse Road, Lincoln Avenue, last year. So we're actually anticipating our sidewalk infrastructure is going to double. And I think it's a great thing for the community. We also have to be monitoring that in terms of what we need to be prepared for. If you has any questions, we'd be happy to.
Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, another excellent report. I see some of this information being a very, very good item for our newsletter that we've got coming out. The roads certainly are front of mind for our residents. So if we've got a nice story to tell, let's tell it. I did come into this report asking myself, are we moving the needle? Are we really making our residents feel like the roads are in better shape today than they were back in 2014? And the information that was shared here in the report, in the document, really answered that question for me. I'm trying to find the stat, but you show a little box that shows probably 2010 through 2017, and the number of kilometers per, oh, here it is right here, table 3. So you say that, on average from 2010 to 2013, there was 9 kilometers per year over 4 years, or 3% of the network, and then from 14 to 18 proposed, it's 26 kilometers per year over 5 years, or 8.5% of the road network. So to me, that was answering the question, you know, have we invested in, and are we gaining, you know, on what we heard back in 14? The other thing that, and we talked about this at a previous infrastructure meeting, was the whole PCI condition rating. And a question I have on that is and maybe we talked about this, and pardon me if we did, but how do we assess the rating? What is it us that does it, or is it an outside firm that does it, or how does that happen?
Maybe I'll start. We hire a consultant to do that for us, who specializes in that type of work. What we use is a geotechnical consultant, so they have a really good handle on road structures, what is required for a good road structure. A third party that does.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chair, you know, and again, you know, it kind of standardizes everything for us. I think it does a nice job of making it clear as to what is our target, why is that target set? You know, is it sort of best in class, or you know, how did we measure up at 75 for somebody to say 75 out of 100? Well, what about the other 25? But if that's actually, you know, best in class or in that upper echelon, I think that's the communication piece we need to give to our residents. So, you know, very, very exciting seeing these results. And I would just comment that, you know, the 1.7 million will most likely be eroded with increased costs. I mean, we're seeing material costs in my day job moving. I mean, you just have to look at the cost of a barrel of oil that's moving now. And so 1.7 may not get you 20 kilometers or 23 kilometers of roads in a year or 2 years. So just, you know, from a looking down the road, so to speak, costs are going up. But nice report. Thank you.
Good comments, Councillor McPherson. Well, one of the things to your point about, you know, you came in tonight, whether we're moving the needles, you know, and what residents are perceiving from 2014 to today. You know, one of the things that Director Graham pointed out to me today, if you look at that chart on page 45, you know, one of the things is, okay, in 2017, we did 30 kilometers of road, and this year we're going to do 20. But the reason we're only doing 20 is because we're doing a lot more hot mix asphalt, which is costing us a lot more money than the tar and chip. So we're doing 10 kilometers less, but we're doing a lot more of the expensive hot mix asphalt. So it can't always be gauged, as Director Graham pointed out to me, by kilometers, but I know where you're going with your comment. I have Councillor Foster and then Councillor Patriarca.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick comments, or actually first a question. One of the things that we've been trying to do, and Dave has been preaching to us for years, and how we're doing this, but it's when we're replacing the cast iron, we want to make sure that we're doing our subdivisions as well. And I know the Drake subdivision was one of the last major ones that was coming into play. I know there's still a bit in town, but just where are we at with that now? Like, are we going, for the urban areas, are we going to be able to kind of ignore water and sewer in some of the areas and make improvements in an upcoming number of years? Or do we still have those foundational changes that still have to be made?
Good question. I think, you know, we've done a lot of progress, or we have done a lot of progress with water main replacement. Drake Avenue was our last pure cast water main on the inside of the pipe where it was metal. We have other cast iron out there which has been laid, cement lined to help save water quality and improve water quality, but we still have to replace those pipes. I'm thinking of a couple of examples like the Cedar Brook area, Frisian. We still have some older ductile iron piping which is problematic, and we're doing design work this year to replace that. But that's really a good example where we're not into rebuilding the whole road, because it's a curved road to begin with. I think a lot of our future urban road works, a lot of it is gonna be driven, just the road's gonna have to get done. We need to do sidewalks, there's drainage issues. There's some that have poor water main, others don't. So I think, to your point, it's gonna be less driven by water, because we've done such a progressive job in replacing the water.
Thank you, that's good, and that hopefully will help as we're looking at some of the future urban items. I just wanted to say, I think Rudy's going to be happy with Academy being done this year, finally. He has been after you and me for years with that. The one area that I think has been a huge miss, and I know this, this has been talked about right from the beginning of my time on council, was 19th, and so I really do hope that as a council we can get some movement on that in the not too distant future. I think of all the areas in our municipality that deserve to have appropriate roads just for the type of community that it is, etc. We really do need to get 19th up and off the board, because it's it's simply too important of an area not to do that. Your numbers that you come up with, Councillor McPherson asked about that. We saw a really neat item at the AMO this past year. A company that does extremely significant testing of roads. And it's one of those things that you would hire them to provide the data on a multi-year thing. So I'll be curious, or I'm just more curious to understand how these guys actually came up with their numbers. Like if we remember correctly, when we were looking at water up in Camden, they were using satellite imagery and trying to make decisions via that. And of course, we had people in here telling us, well, that's not the way the rivers flow, type of thing. So I'm just more curious how they made the decisions on the roads, and whether or not, even for better metrics in the future, it might be something that we want to look at with some of these others. So that's for you, Mr. Chair.
I believe Walter, the company that Councillor Foster is referring to there is that same company we spoke about after coming back from Ottawa. The gal and the guy that worked for the LED street lighting company that we work with are now with this company here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Staff did follow up on that. We did a webinar with that company to learn a lot more about that company. And yeah, it's definitely exciting to look at it. And they don't just look at roads, they do a number of other assets that sidewalks, boulevard items, etc. So it's definitely something we need to be monitoring and seeing.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. I just want to highlight, I guess, the box on, it says page 15, but page 37. So the staffing. And I mean, this minimum maintenance standard where we're going to have to take on all of the municipal sidewalks, and our municipal sidewalks are going to double. And I mean, you can see that this problem has come to roost. We don't have enough people. And we had like a labor pool of on-call drivers. Like, I think we've spread ourselves way too thin. And an example of that is the snow removal this year in the urban setting. Whether I'm walking the dog, I've got an email here from a resident on the street, tends to be my mother. But whether I'm walking the dog or whether I'm at the mailbox, comments like, well, people have come to expect a certain level of maintenance. And thus far, we've not delivered on that. And, I pull out this report from 2015, Winter Maintenance Operation Extended Snow Fence Program. So we expanded, we expanded our program from 3,000 meters to 4,000 meters, but then it stopped. And, you know, I get the updates every day that say we're up over the hill plowing drifting snow. But if we don't do anything to combat the drifting snow, it's going to constantly be a problem. And if we don't, and if the water main breaks and staff got to go there, then who loses, right? And it's the urban dweller that's losing, that's come to expect a certain level. And maybe we've over-delivered, but now we've set ourselves up for failure. And we have failed a little bit this year. So, I mean, I would seriously look. You know, Dave, you said we're buying a new snowplow, but unless it's a Phantom going to drive this thing, like we've got to up the complement of staff to do all these things. And I mean, you know, we're adding kilometers of road and kilometers of sidewalk, and I just think we've come to that crunch point. And I know Councillor Foster doesn't, you know, staffing, but in order to deliver these services, we need to, and maybe not technically qualified staff, you know what I mean? Like laborers to do the laboring work. Like we can't have, you know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, guys, but we can't have, you know, like a contractor. Or contractor, right? Like we got to get to that mix where we can get everything. So that would be just my 2 cents for the evening out of the report.
Do you want to comment on Councillor Patrick's comments, or just?
Sure. For sure, very important point about staffing resources. We are very thin. Over the last 2 years, with sales support and council support, we've added a few frontline staff to help shore up things, but we have a long ways to go still. Especially when we're looking at growth and you know, we are actively working on plans, looking at our staffing levels to preparedness for this. We are very lean. We're also looking at succession planning as well. Probably a topic for another committee another time, but you know, we have retirees coming up in the future, so we've got to start getting succession in place. I know in this year's budget, we did allocate money for a new water operator, or we call it operator in training, because we have some senior people in our water department that are going to be retiring. And we're starting to have a succession plan to bring in some junior people to start learning from the people and gaining their licenses, so we are looking at that as well. This year, we did all of our snow fence up. We got about 2/3 up. Some of the issues that we did run into, farmers that we are waiting for them to get the harvest off. We're late getting the harvest off, and we had wet field conditions. Made that a bit, and then we started getting the winter weather, and we were attending to the winter weather. So we are trying our best to get the remaining snow fence up when we get a break in the weather right now. In terms of the drifting above the escarpment, we had a lot of issues with drifting, as you know, over the last 2 weeks. Very high winds above the escarpment. That has been an issue. I mean, it's typical what you can experience above the escarpment, but it has been quite challenging. We've had to, again, it had to be a priority for us and for the community. We had to know who's drifting in, so we had to deploy our resources to attend to those situations.
On that, Councilor Burnett? Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, whether we take a look at the full gamut, whether it's staffing, whether it's contracting, like we presently contract someone out to put the posts in for the snow fence. Let's look at contracting him to install the things, because if they're lying on the ground, they're not going to do any work. And I mean, the farmers getting the crops out late, conversation, living snow fence, leave 10 rows of corn in. You don't have to worry about putting up a fence. I mean, I was in Strathroy on a Thursday and Friday, and the 402 was closed. So driving and backtracking through there, and you know, there was some farms that whether it was luck or whether it was planned, corn was left in. And I mean, it doesn't matter if it's harvested in the spring, it's still going to go to the dryer and dry, and it's still going to be fine. And, you know, I'm driving down this road, and I would have taken a video if I could have left one hand off the wheel, but I was worried about going in the ditch. But you do come to these fields, and there's a calm. Snow's not, the wind's not whipping across the road, it's not drifting, but then you get out of that and it starts again. And I even marveled up there, like, and that, they get more snow than we do, and I'm just thinking, like, you know this is going to happen. And unless you're wearing the ruby slippers and clicking them together going, God, I hope we get another winter like last year. The law of averages says it's not. So we got to start helping ourselves. So whether we need to look at contract or extra people, but let's put us in a position, for success and to succeed. And because if you're chasing your tail and hoping that things don't happen, what's going to break. 2 water mains, 3 water mains are going to break, and there's going to be high winds, and people are over their allotments, and you end up with, you get 2-3 people trying to do the job of 10. So I just want to lay that out, and that way that will make everyone look good at the end of the day. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think these reports are really valuable, and certainly in the last couple of years, we've been able to make some pretty important decisions as a result of them. What keeps coming up for me is that we're making a significant investment in base services based on affordability more than anything else. But there is a cost around the core services of the town, and maybe it's time for us to take on that comprehensive decision, even if it scares the daylights out of us. It's kind of looking at the infrastructure gap and realizing, are we ever going to, bring it closer together? Well, maybe we won't, but we've certainly got better at prioritizing. So you can't, and we're continuing to invest. So I think that's how you get it under control, so you're not feeling nervous about it all the time. I think the same thing here. I don't know how many nights I was awake in the last 2 weeks because of the amount of equipment that was outside, either outside my bedroom window or down on Frost Road, just working all night. I've never seen roads fill in like that. There was just no stopping it. And there was a lot of crew that was up there constantly working on them. So we've got a situation now where our urban areas are substantial, and you can't just decide you're going to do one and not the other. They both have to be done. It's like saying you're not going to pick up garbage in Lincoln today, you're only going to pick it up in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And we know how well that's going. So maybe it's time for us to start looking at the whole package instead of ignoring one at the expense of something else, taking on, fulfilling one mandate. It's like doing sidewalks or ignoring sidewalks and always paying attention to the roads, and that's not working well either. So I'd rather see what that picture looks like so that we can start, deciding how we're going to prioritize or how we're going to deliver the service, because, yes, outsourcing. It works, it doesn't work, depends on the level of supervision, so many variables, but that's the nature of our community. We just can't ignore the fact that we have rural roads. And when they start blowing in like that, you have to deal with it. I mean, people were just getting really stuck. It was really pretty nerve-wracking, I think, for them. So overlap on the shoulder seasons, it's always a problem. No point in pulling people out of the garden when there's a ton of work to do something else. So to me, it just looks like we do need more staff, but I don't think we know quite yet where we would put them. Maybe you do, but we don't. But I think as a council, we need to see the whole story now. And I don't really know, Mr. Chairman, what to say about the road surfacing. I like what I'm seeing. The numbers feel, they look good. I feel good about that number. but I don't know what other variables that we need to consider so that we can get the best results. So some of that might be closing roads to certain traffic. I'm just throwing stuff out. Closing roads, period. Changing road services if there's really heavy-duty traffic. I'm thinking about some of the rural roads. It looks like we've got a very wide range of rehab measures. We've talked before about the quality of the work. I've never really got any answers on that. I don't know whether, are we happy with the tar and chip work? Maybe, I don't know, maybe you did tell me and I've just forgotten. And I have to say, I'd like you to go back to that, Mr. Chairman, to the picture of the good and bad. I don't think I really understood what was going on at the end there. It looked like we were doing better in 2015. If we could just have a look at that. Yeah, I mean, in 2015, what happened between 2015 and 2016? I don't get that at all. 2015 looks like a banner year.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, there must, I'd have to go back, there must have been more surface treatment, which is a lot.
Huge. Oh, okay.
We can surface treat so many more kilometers.
Oh, you did say that. I'm sorry. It went right over my head. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so then in 2016, we were down to,
So the difference for the most part, Mrs. Mayor, is in 2012 and 13, we were, for the most part, focusing on deteriorated roads that are they're very much in
Yeah.
bad shape. We're just going to keep reconstructing roads, and we never gained on our pavement, we never gained on the overall condition of pavement. That's what happens to a lot of municipalities. And so we've got to do a pavement preservation strategy. So as you see, it's leveled out. We did more on good roads, but we also did bad roads too. You have reconstructed and rehabilitated.
but that was always the philosophy, Mr. Chairman. The philosophy was always keep the good roads good. So how did we fool ourselves into getting away from that?
But we did back in 2012 and 13 and previous to that, it was just reconstructing roads.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of surface treatment going on and
Right.
resurfacing roads. We tar and chipped everything. We changed from gravel roads and we tar and chipped everything over, but we didn't get into the mindset that, oh, now that we've tar and chipped these gravel roads, we've got to now surface treat them or do something to them every 5, 7, 8 years.
Right.
And so then they started all across the town, we got into this overall vision, oh my goodness, we've got so many deteriorated roads, what is going on? And so now we've gotten into this pavement preservation strategy. Hey, let's resurface roads. And your comments of, is tar and chip good? There's microsurfacing, there are other products that, yes, we.
So tell me why, I don't know why I didn't ask you this at the time, but why have we dropped down here? Is it, as Councillor McPherson says, that the cost is, or maybe it was Councillor Petrie, it doesn't matter, is the cost so much greater per kilometer now that this is all we can afford to do? Why have we made that big drop?
Mr. Chairman, so if you look at 2018, the gold bar,
Right,
that's where we're doing resurfacing works, which could be a range of tar and chip and asphalt resurfacing to keep that road sealed, keep water from getting into it and making it a road where we have to reconstruct and spend lots of money. So the gold is the Good Road program. So in 2018, we're doing a lot of asphalt, hot black asphalt in urban areas. So we shave and pave,
Yeah.
shave it off and put asphalt down.
Right.
That's a lot more money than tar and chip.
okay, I think you said that, and I must be, so much information. Okay, I'm sorry.
Years, like 2015, for example,
Right.
we probably didn't do much asphalt resurfacing in that year. We did tar and chip, and since it's cheaper, more kilometers.
Okay, yes, I understand. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I'm getting too tired or something. I do understand it. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for going over that again. I appreciate it.
Councilor McPherson?
I was just going to make a comment on this, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think this doesn't show the investment in urban roads. If you look at our investment is going up, right? Here, it looks like our investment in roads is going down. But if you look at 2015, if I recall, there was no urban roads that were done there. Okay, this was all maintenance.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why that's a big number in 15, whereas we still continue to invest bigger and bigger every year, but we take on a Drake, or we take on a 23rd Street, and we don't do as many kilometers because we're doing an urban road. So that to me is how I read that graph. It speaks very good to my concern over the 3 years that, hey, wait a minute, we're not doing what we told our residents we were going to do, invest in more kilometers, where we were spending the money, but it was combined with maintenance and urban. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay.
Councilor Foster?
Yeah, just a general comment, because I've been listening to the comments, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit at times. I mean, I heard a little bit of negativity from Councillor Pachariva, and, just a titch from the mayor, although very, very tiny little weeny bit. But the thing is that this is the result of 10 years of increased spending on roads. I mean, like, this has been a huge effort to get us to where we are today. And, I think we've been doing an awful lot of the really good stuff. I think, there was some work done a couple of years ago by Dave and his team to figure out the snow plowing and how it was going to be handled within the municipality. And part of that was to do more work within the rural area as well. I mean, we wanted to make sure at the time there was a really good balance going on. Maybe our expectations are a little too high. I mean, like, up at Highway 21, up by my cottage up there, and there's lots of people living up there, that highway's been closed for 5 days, or was, with the snow coming in off the lake. And maybe the expectation when we have a massive snowstorm and the type of winds and stuff like that, maybe Frost Road is going to end up, not being able to be done while the rest of the stuff is trying to be done. I mean, like, there's just some things like that we have to work through. So, but anyway, I actually think Dave and the team have done a superb job, and I'm really happy the council has made the investments that they have. So, anyway, there we go.
No, I appreciate those comments. I just, the one thing that came out when I spoke with Dave today, and Dave always is he's always cautious when he's started talking about staffing but one of the things that came out to me, and I know Dave has talked to the CAO, but it's painfully obvious when you look at Dave, you've got to admit that with the minimum standards, looking right down at us with this provincial regulation, and we're going to take over all these sidewalks. And just look back a few years ago, how many digital signs did we have? How many do we have now? And we're moving these digital signs around, 47 different locations. And with the minimum standards on signage, what's the number? 2,672 signs that we're going around managing, making sure we're regulating, and the signs are proper, and we're changing these signs. Like, we're doing more with less. And sooner or later, we have to address that. And good for you, Dave, for acknowledging that, we need an operator in training with wastewater. But, you've got 3 laborers. You ask for a laborer in the budget, but like sooner or later, like, we're doing more with less. And I know you've talked to the CEO. Councilor Patrick.
Yeah, and through all of this, Chair, through you, and I think we've been really strategic in our infrastructure investment. And I think now it's time we invest in the people. Right, now we look at the staffing and the people are the contracting. We've done a great job to commit to getting ahead and closing that infrastructure gap. But I think now to get us to that where we want to be, that 75% or whatever, meeting the minimum maintenance standards, we need the staffing complement, either contracted or on hand to do it. And you can't do one without the other. So we've made the investment, and I think if the business case is brought back, we'll give you the investment in the people. You know that, so.
If I could comment, I'm sorry, Dave, to you, Mr. Chair. I'm leaving, and so it's an easy thing for me to say, but, from what I saw, and I do appreciate the comments, and I know there's frustration, no doubt, when you're in areas, how the condition of the road. But, as well, and I know and I appreciate your comments, because staff put in a ton of hours, they worked around the clock, because, and worked very hard, and so I really do appreciate, and always, coming, comments from council, to tell staff, and so it is very welcoming, and it's very good to hear of, these comments that, staff do need to support as well, but I know they will, how that all turns out, I don't know, but that is appreciated.
Really, you just have to look at some of these graphs. Just look at roadside ditching, and in 2014, we did 4.2 kilometers. Last year, we did none. That's not happening through osmosis. We're putting people out there with 3 or 4 or 5 different pieces of equipment. Gradalls and dump trucks and flagmen, and that all costs money. What we're doing, and the stats are there, we've doubled it. And, digital signs and signage, that's not happening on its own. So sooner or later, we need to add more people if you're gonna continue to show those type of increases. So anyway, good discussion. We have a motion, moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that report PW 18-02, the summary report for Public Works Department, roads infrastructure, be received as information. Your pleasure on the motion, and that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Rippenberg. That might be your last presentation. Thank you very much.
More snow, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
When is your last,
The 26th of this month, so, yeah.
Days.
Yes, that's right, yes.
I might have to wrap this up and go for a bite.
the last report we have this evening is an information update on the Transportation Master Plan. Are there any questions from committee members on that report from the Transportation Master Plan? Councillor McPherson.
Just a comment, and, with, some of the public meetings that we've had and some of the participation, it'd be nice to see the community come out and support this. A lot of questions on some of the developments that we're putting out there in public meetings about traffic, and, I really hope that people come out and participate, and I hope that Kerry's able to work with Public Works and get the word out and try to, Transportation Master Plan, to some, they wouldn't know what the heck we're talking about, but how do we communicate that to the everyday resident, that this is what we're talking about, this is your opportunity to participate. So looks like we got a lot on the plate early in 2018, and let's hope that we get input. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick comment. So I'm assuming when this is all said and done, we have our master transportation plan. Of course, it was region-focused, and we're now participating in it. The expectation is that we're going to have a document that's basically stating, here's how into the future we need to be moving traffic, et cetera. And again, I've been hammering away for years on this thing about, trying to figure out, selfishly, Beamsville area, because it's been such a mess in some differing ways of actually moving people around. So, so is the expectation when we have a final report coming in here, it's going to give us the credibility to go to the region and say, look, you guys, you say we can't have a light in this position, but it has to be here because the flow of traffic is demanding that we have this coming off of Stadelbauer or coming out of Drake or whatever the case may be. And so is the intention of this report to basically give us that type of ammunition when it's all said and done?
Through Mr. Chairman, yes, it is. That'll be one of the deliverables is the regional corridors and traffic lights, for sure.
Mary Stone.
Mr. Chairman, this is quite timely because in the fall, you may recall that there was request by the Ontario Sand and Gravel group that we're attending to come up with haul routes which could be published. So Mr. Graham looked after that with Mr. Neubauer, and Walter sent me that list of roads, and a number of them, of course, are regional roads. So I was wondering, I don't know whether you want to do it tonight, but I think there should be a discussion about haul routes, a formal discussion about haul routes, because the intention is that they then be published with all of the quarries and, where everybody is, where the trucks are coming out of, because they have new mechanisms in place now to control where these trucks are traveling, and they're prepared to bring the hammer down on them pretty heavy. So I think there's enough roads that I think it does require a separate discussion, but it certainly follows here under section number 4 under the 2018, it doesn't say haul routes, but it talks about truck traffic management plan. And also the escarpment crossing strategies. I was wondering, Mr. Chairman, if the last time this came up, along with the 19th Street issue, there was going to be meetings held, and I'm wondering if that happened because those things all fit into here. I guess what I don't want to hear is that we're waiting for the TMP to be done.
Well, Dr. Graham, did you want to talk about what we talked about at this morning's meeting in terms of Mr. Tripp?
Yes, I'd be happy to, through Mr. Chairman. So in response to committee's request later last fall about getting the region at the table, because we have a number of important projects in our community that are regional, we have had a meeting with the region, and we've asked the region to come as a delegation to our infrastructure committee to provide a face-to-face update to committee on these projects. The escarpment crossing study, the King Street EA, both in Beamsville, the one in Vineland that's being completed, the Jordan EA support. So we are trying to set something up for a delegation for regional staff to come and talk to committee and hear from committee as well directly on how important these projects are.
Great. I mean, I think that's encouraging. Then, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Graham, how do you want to handle the issue of the haul routes? Because I think that it does require a committee. We need a political input into how we're going to handle this.
For sure. I totally agree. I know through the TMP process right now, and maybe Walter can chime in as well, but right now we're doing a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes, so to speak, in terms of assessing technical components and modeling of the network so we can bring things back to committee and the public to have something you can look at and start having input on. But truck traffic management is a massive part of this, so we can bring something back to committee on the progress that's been made with the TMP and looking at where we might want to have more preferred truck routes versus others. That we'd be happy to do that. I don't know, Walter, if you have any thoughts on that, of how we can engage that?
That would be fine. We could.
Yeah, we could put it on an agenda, and if you think that would be preferable from committee's perspective, and
Well, I think that somebody's going to be calling us to account here, Mr. Chairman, in a few months about what we've done on this matter. And I know it's not an easy one, and I'm not suggesting that nothing has been done. I think there have been things that have been done. It's just a matter of how we're going to convey that message and to be able to demonstrate that there's a progressiveness to it as well, just like, has been done with the traffic program.
Walter, did
Okay.
you want to add something else?
I was going to, just to add that, under item number 4, under next steps, you'll notice there's a number of bullets. And although the Transportation Master Plan document is envisioned to be a one document, master document for the community, each one of these items are very individual. So some may, as the mayor is suggesting, require some more input from committee and from council to get us to where we need to be. So to me, that would be fine. I will speak with Dave and we'll pick a time or which meeting is most appropriate, and we could even have our consultant come to that meeting and be part of that discussion and discuss what they're seeing in other communities, because we're not the only community that is part of this problem with aggregate moving, so in trucks in general.
That would be very helpful, Mr. Chairman. If I could just say that we need to respond to the Sand and Gravel Committee. They had made a request, so we do need to respond to them. If we could do that with the haul routes we have now, the ones that we've been using for ever and ever, I think that would be quite satisfactory, knowing that that's going to come up with a more comprehensive report later on. That's fine, thank
We're
you.
spending a lot of money on WSP for this transportation master plan, and one of the reasons we said we awarded it to them was the expertise they brought to the table in all these areas. So let's get them here and let's bring them on the table.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, just, I like where the mayor's going with that, but both Councillor McPherson's and my committees, the two committees of the whole, we should, for all intents and purposes, be winding down a bit, like we've been going flat out for the last year and a half on all these things. So it might make sense to dedicate an upcoming meeting somewhere along the line to some of these big ticket items and let all of council speak to this. I mean, like this, the transportation master plan is important, for all of us as it's going on. So. So maybe you can talk to Mike about that and see, how he feels about that as well. But it could easily fit under either one of the committees, Paul, I think so, because it has aptitude with both. So.
We have a motion moved by Councillor Foster and seconded by Mayor. The transportation master plan information update we received as information. Pleasure of motion. Councillor inquiries. Councillor first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the two standard inquiries set to go, and so I'm hearing that we are going to have the region join us in the near future for Jordan EA and Vineland King Street. That's great. I guess I had also heard that there was contact made with the ministry on trying to move it along, trying to move the Jordan EA along, so I'm happy to hear that. I just had a thought here, and I'm thinking about a couple of the developments that are happening in the downtown core, and I'm just wondering of the timing of these developments and how they're going to impact traffic. And I'm thinking about the Tickerelli development that I'm hearing may kick off in the spring, now that the soil has been evaluated. I'm also thinking about the apartment building on the corner of May Street and Ontario Street, that I'm not sure what the timing is for that. And I'm thinking about the DeSantis building between the Fleming Center and Krabby Jones. I mean, if you have all three of those going at the same time, you could cripple the downtown.
You've got Mr. Chettle's property at John Street, too. That's
So,
what's gone.
I'm just from maybe a communication piece between departments, planning and public works, you know, is there a coordination of traffic potentially in that, the heart of our downtown core, you know, really? So, don't know, you know, as I say, I don't know what the timing's like. I'm hearing, and if I could sense Gabe, he wants to get the thing going. He's got signs up and whatnot, again, I'm hearing Tickerelli's ready to go, and or potentially ready to go in the spring, so that could be a summer disaster.
You've got the M-Shi development retirement, too.
Yeah.
What's the update on it?
So, thank you.
Through Mr. Chairman, so I guess from the planning process, all those development applications are required to submit a traffic impact study by a qualified traffic engineering consultant to demonstrate to the municipality that they're, I guess, first of all, to quantify traffic increases, traffic flows, and then look at if there's mitigation requirements required. So that is a process that is required to be done by the developer. Again, with the transportation master plan, we are taking in all those inputs into our modeling and also looking at future growth. So it will all be comprehensively evaluated, but it's not that it hasn't to date. All these developments have been looked at with their own traffic impact studies. And those traffic impact studies, they primarily, you know, they look at that development, but they also are looking at the receiving road network. So I guess in answer to your question, yes, that has been looked at, but the TMP will pull it together and also look at future growth down the road and add that to it.
Thank you. Dave, my concern is the construction period.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not, and I mean, that's another issue, but it's the construction period.
construction
And if they're
traffic,
all
okay.
being built at the same time and with trucks and moving dirt and whatever through the heart of our town, we could have a bit of a nightmare on our hands.
Through Mr. Chairman, no, very good comment. So I mean, that's something that we need to be in close consultation with planning and looking at, you know, when are these projects going to be under construction, and you know, and like you say, not just look at one under construction, but look at the ones that.
One will be tough enough, you know, downtown, that's gonna be.
That's gonna be big.
It's gonna be interesting, but you get 2 or 3 of them.
Question. Yeah.
It's a really good question that Paul's bringing forward. I think where we're fortunate is that we're not through site plan for either DeSantis or for the May and Ontario. Like, we're not even close to the site plan, and we've only just basically done the first pass through on the zoning and stuff like that. So it might not be as bad as that, but I think you're bang on. I think this whole construction thing has to be thought through. It's gonna be the same thing down on Green Lane when they build those 2 monster places down there. I mean, like all of these things are going to have a significant impact, and that we just have to make sure. I think you're basically telling staff, make sure you're ahead of the game on this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And Lincoln Avenue Street,
yeah,
That's right.
you got 2 going. North and south, and Cherry Heights, and
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's.
if they get helicopters.
Well, I did see about 6 or 7 dump trucks heading into Cherry Heights this morning at 7:30.
Oh, they've been going.
Still going
Like
strong.
16 running,
Yeah.
16 trucks.
Yeah, they were lined up right, one behind the other, going right in there.
Councillor Petrie.
Thank you, Chair Brunet. As always, my favorite part of the meeting. Coming down to tonight's meeting, I noticed three things. That LED streetlight, David, on Village Park at the corner in front of Caslin's house is out again. There's 6 decorative streetlights downtown that are out. 2 of them on the north side between Ontario and Mountain Street. So, I mean, they're side by side. So, I mean, thank God we've got the Christmas lights because it's very dark. Wondering how, if we've had any, and this goes to advertisements I heard on the radio and in the paper. How are we making out with vehicles parked on the street with snow removal? Like St. Catharines has instituted their snow parking. So after a snow, they say, please don't park on the street. And again, I know that's some of the problems. I mean, I use our street, for example, these people that park on the street, and then, you know, the plows out, and like, how do we say, and is there a movement, or is it just like, you know, between November and April 1st, you will not park on the street in a snow event after it snows, so the staff can do their job. Like, I think it's common sense that you don't, but I think a lot of people in our town don't have common sense. So how do we help you with that? Or is it a problem that you guys experience, or is, you know?
Through Mr. Chairman, maybe Lee might want to add something to it. So what we started last year and we're doing it this year is the Keep It Clear campaign. And that's where we declare, it's basically a communication strategy to educate and ask people to refrain from parking on the street when we know a storm is coming for 48 hours afterwards. So that's an active campaign that we're doing. We've also, and that's kind of following the St. Catharines model versus a hardcore, you can't park on the road all winter. That's been the approach that we've kind of taken as a first step. We also have, and I can't remember how many streets, Lee, but we do have, I'm going to say a dozen, 13 streets that are problematic when people park on that street for snow clearing. So we've done individual communication with those residents with the Keep It Clear campaign and tried to inform them why it's important not to park on the street when there's a storm coming and why we need their cooperation. And then we also have a bylaw, a process with bylaw when we have a Keep It Clear campaign, when we issued the Keep It Clear campaign, where bylaw is actively monitoring those problematic streets with our current on-street parking bylaw restrictions. So to be a lot more ahead of the game, so to speak, than waiting until our plow drivers are having a lot of trouble, and then we're starting from scratch with bylaw at that point, so they're proactively going into those areas. I don't know, Lee, if you have anything you'd like to add to that, but.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much everything. So, I mean, so Saturday, we're looking that, you know, there's snow coming right now in the forecast. So we've already told Chris, you know, in bylaw, okay, we've got this coming up. We may be instituting the Keep It Clear campaign, but what we would like for him is on the Friday, if all is going, you know, according to plan, on Friday, can you get your bylaw officers out there, patrol at least the 13 hotspot roads, keep an eye on those, and then on Saturday, if they're in our way, if the 24-hour time allotment, if they've been sitting there and it's obvious that they've been there over the 24 hours, then they could be ticketed and towed after that. So that's what we're planning to do, and doing more of that communication between us and bylaw.
Okay, and you know, maybe a suggestion would be to hit the tax bills in the fourth quarter of last year and the first quarter, and then a reminder too, because I saw on CH tonight, and the Hamilton guys were out, but they're just not going to be able to do it. As a reminder to people, again, you can help staff. So you know the rain's coming, and you know the snow's going to come, and the rain's not going to get down because it's going to quick freeze. And so if there's a grate in front of your house, clean it, right? Because they said today in Hamilton, there's 3,500 grates, and they're just not going to get to them. Physically not, you can't. They don't have that many people, but you could help. So, and then I had 3 things that came up at the levy, talking to people. 2 are rather innocuous, and I said I would bring them up tonight. So the 2 parking spots in front of Avondale, 15-minute spots, they were there when the post office was there. And there's times of day when they can be problematic. So this resident asked if we could look at those. Like Avondale has a parking lot there that will fit 8, 10 cars. So they're really not necessary, in their opinion. So, second one was sidewalk clearing. So, 24 hours, supposed to clear your sidewalk. Bylaw's been a little lax in that, and that was, I heard that about 6 times. So, I mean, if they're looking at those 13 problem areas, I mean, let's be looking at the sidewalks as well. So I had that comment. And then the other one was Academy Street. And I told Dave about this, and I don't know if I should share it with Walter. A couple of residents at the levee, back to the concern of the sidewalk. And the sidewalk going in and that people have already, and I know why we're doing it, right? We're doing it because it needs to meet urban standards. So we're doing curb and gutter, and part of that calls for a sidewalk. But a lot of those people in that area have already established active transportation routes. They go up to Beam and across and down, either because they're going to the medical center or they're going to the plaza. So I know, so the sidewalk seems a bit redundant. And what they were more concerned about is the fact that people are, and I promised I would get Dave the times when this is occurring, they're not obeying the one way. There's a couple people on that street that, rules aren't for them. They will go what way they want. And that's what a couple of the residents were really concerned about. So whether, if I can get some times for David, I'll call them, whether we can get the police there, but those were more of a concern than the others. So, yeah. So I said I'd bring it up tonight.
I think it's great that we have a lot of engineers in town and other experts. I think it's great that people get involved. But I absolutely believe that the town has to set the standards on things like roads. And if road safety involves having curbs and involves having a sidewalk, even if it is a narrower sidewalk, whatever we decide that standard is, I think we're at risk if we decide we're going to do it here, but we're not going to do it here because somebody else has some expert opinion about it. It's like that road down in between, down at Prudham's. That is not a decision for the community to make. That is a planning decision that will dictate what is in the best interest of planning for this community, not at corner, but everywhere. And I think we need to be very careful about going anywhere near having variables around those things, because I think it's really hard to get these standards, get your community to a level where you have a good standard, and then you start playing around with it because somebody just comes out of the woodwork and decides that they want something else. And they do it in a really forceful way. So
yeah, but it's problematic where and we've seen this in other areas of town, where the sidewalk is flush with the curb.
Yes.
So you look at St. George's, and I guess now we're taking on sidewalk cleaning, so we'll be responsible for it. But it's that snow loading issue. So again, we have to make sure that the plow goes the proper way, so the snow goes to the east side of the street, not the west side of the street.
Well, this is, Mr. Chairman, it's a very narrow street. We've got a few of them.
Yeah.
Not many. It's the oldest part of town.
But I
And
have to do my job, and
I know.
I have to bring the points forward, and whether we
I
come
know.
up with a.
But I hope we don't, I just hope we don't start.
No, I'm not gonna promise, go up and down bollards to anyone. That's my card.
Any other inquiries? I just just wanted to, Dave, thank you very much. I've been hearing from residents who have been waiting for 10 or 12 years to have Hillside Drive top asphalt done, and that got done in late November, so I've heard nothing but good things there. With all the cold weather, have we had a lot of water main breaks?
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman, so we've been pretty lucky. I mean, maybe you saw some of the emails going around, but when we had the real cold snap a week and a half ago, we had 3 water main breaks. That's not unusual for municipalities to experience, just because once you get the cold snap, you get different frost levels and ground moves. So generally speaking, we've been doing good, but we did have 3 all at once with the cold weather. But
It wouldn't be an infrastructure meeting if I didn't ask. Keep asking you, and you're sick and tired of hearing it, but we've got Durham Road done and we've got Tufford Road done, but the one that everybody drives on in Bartlett, CN Rail Crossing, is still a major problem. And I'm gonna stop going to church because I keep hearing it every Sunday.
You just gotta sit with me. You can't sit by Dean.
Any update?
yeah, through Mr. Chairman, Lee's going to get sick of hearing from me. No, it's the CN they couldn't get a paving contractor at the end of the year, and they need a paving contractor to fix that crossing. They didn't have the materials right away either. Like I said, they did Durham and Tufford, and we were holding them to get Bartlett done, and they weren't ready. So
Just put it in a letter and post it in Father Phil's office.
You know something, well, this is a riot, because it's like, yeah, there's a bump there, and it's gonna slow the bloody people down as they're going across, because they're ripping up Bartlett, and it's causing grief up in that subdivision, so, oh well, it's a little bumpy for the moment, we'll get around to it.
But the thing is, they did Tufford, which wasn't.
Celebrate the victories. We got Metrolinx to do a concrete pad in January.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll wait till the spring for CN.
You know what? When we first came on council, we couldn't even get them to come to a meeting. And here they are fixing to
Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, are there any announcements? No. There are no closed sessions this evening. If there are no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.